Hello and welcome to Industry Night with me, Nycci Nellis, the show that takes you on a deep dive of the happenings of the hospitality industry. Every week, I get to talk to an incredible array of talented people about their passions and professions. Now, here's a little bit of background about me if you're just checking in for the first time. And if you've been here a bunch, then just sit back, relax, and listen. I've been covering the food, beverage, and hospitality scene for the last 20 years through a variety of outlets: print, online, TV, radio, podcasts, and social. 20 years of thelistareyouwantit.com, the online scene that tells you everything about everything happening in the DC metro area. Every Sunday, you tune in to Foodie and the Beast, DC's only food and wine radio variety show. We just celebrated 16 years on 1500. And of course, you follow me at NYCCINELLIS on Facebook and Twitter and Threads and LinkedIn and what else? Oh, and on Instagram, obviously. You have to follow me on Instagram and on YouTube, where this show now resides, as well as all of your favorite podcast platforms. So, as you can tell, I'm taking a break from my residencies, although I will say, haven't they been fun? I love being out in Delaplane, Virginia, sitting amongst the vines of Barrel Oak and the mountains of the Shenandoah behind me. It was such a treat to tape 4 shows there. I love being on location. It's fun. But sometimes, just sometimes, my guests are all the way across the country. So we pop on the screen to chat here in my not nearly as sexy as a vineyard office, but I'll take it. So now, regular listeners know that I would normally start the show by taking you through like the week of travels and eats. And you know, your girl has been out and about. I was up in Boston for an incredible dining scene up there. It's so cool. I stopped at this kosher restaurant that is like kosher restaurant and community building all at once. It's called Lair House. It's in my Insta feed. Check it out. Also, Oliver Patson, who is the son of the very famous Peter Patson of To Amy's fame, has opened up a fantastic neighborhood gem called Bar Del Monte in Mount Pleasant. Order the Panforte and you're welcome. And I did pop into the New River Club. It's super swanky. But again, next show, I'll go into more detail on all those things. So, for those of you who know me, it takes a lot for me to gush about my guests. I like to play it cool. I mean, it's my job to interview people, and I've had the pleasure of chatting with so many of the greatest people in this industry. But I'm a little giddy today. I'm totally fangirling, and I'm actually a little nervous because I have chef, author, food activist, and the founder and owner of Chez Panisse Restaurant in Berkeley, California, Alice Waters. She is also this year's recipient of the Julia Child Award. I mean, for those of you who don't know, I mean, she's got tons of awards, but this is a very big deal because the award recognizes those who have an impact on the American culinary scene. And it's been given by the Julia Child Foundation for Gastronomy and Culinary Arts since 2015. She's going to get a $50,000 prize. And some of the previous winners who have also been on the show include Grace Young and José Andrés and Danny Myers. And last year we had Sean Sherman. Now, I want you to mark your calendars because Alice will be honored here in DC on October 17th. There'll be a huge event at the Smithsonian's National Food History Weekend. More details on that in a little bit. But also in with me today are 2 favorites who've been on the show multiple times. I've got Paula Johnson. She's the curator of food history at the National Museum of American History. And Eric Spivey. He's the chairman of trustee of the Julia Child Foundation for Gastronomy and Culinary Arts. So, Alice, thank you so much for joining me. Congratulations again on the award. It's so very exciting.
Thank you so much.
And I know you have a ton of awards. And as I was putting together the questions for you, I was really struggling because, you know, so many people have interviewed you, and I don't want you to be bored by my questions, but I can't help but talk about sort of the massive impact you've had on how we now eat in this country. And what was it 53 years ago when you were starting Chez Panisse that you wanted, that you weren't having, that you wanted to see?
I wanted to eat food and live like the French. This was back in 1965, and it's when I went, and I felt like it was the first time I tasted food and loved it. And but it wasn't just the food. It was the marketplaces on the way to the Sorbonne. It was the way that the French lived their lives. Even parents came home and had lunch with their children at that time, which is quite amazing. And I watched people stand in line for 20 minutes to have a baguette, to get a baguette, and then I did it too, and and I understood why. But it was that conversation that people had in line, and the way that students got together after school. It was the way that really the way that they lived their lives. It wasn't just the food. So I came back and I wanted to live like that. And I knew it had to do with the food. And I've said it over and over again that I kind of couldn't find that food. And the food that was in French restaurants, fancy ones at that time, was brought in from France. And so I in my naivete, said, well, maybe if I open a little French restaurant, the food will come.
But when you were in France back then, did you have this aha moment that the food was local, that they were working with with farmers? I mean, that's how we, you know what I mean? Like, it was different.
No, I didn't know what it was that was happening, and I knew that I could only have my fraises de bois at one little moment at a time. And if I wanted more, I had to go up in the woods to pick them. And I knew that there was a time to eat certain things, in the year. But I didn't really understand that was what made them taste the way they tasted. And of course, this was before there were pesticides and all of that in the food. So I just happened to have very good luck to meet a farmer who was, and he wasn't an organic farmer. He was more than that. He wouldn't call himself that. It was Bob Kennard, and he was a regenerative farmer. And he said, my food is 20% more nutritious than anybody else's. And
was that really important to you at that time? Because I know your mom wasn't like a great cook, but I was curious.
No, well, actually, I should go back to the beginning, because we only had one menu at the restaurant. No choices, except if you wanted salad or cheese after the main dish. So you had a first course, a second course, a main course, choice of salad or cheese, and dessert. All this for $3.95. But I wanted people to love it. And so I was really trying to understand everything that we bought and how we were cooking it. And some of the first delicious experiences came from people's backyard. And fruit came from Lindsay Shearer, who was the pastry chef, her family farm up in Healdsburg. And so we were beginning to understand that taste came from people who were growing the food in a certain way and picking it when it was ripe. And then, of course, came Bob Kennard, who really emphasized that. And he wanted to pick up all of our food compost and take it back and put it into the ground, because, as I said, he was a regenerative farmer, and he said everything in the soil makes not only the food healthier, but tastier. And I believed him. and the rest is but
Kind of history.
a history. But the most important part, really, and I can't say this enough, was the buying the food directly. So we paid him the real cost of the food. We didn't have a Cisco middleman. We were taking our compost up, picking our food up, and bringing it back to the restaurant. And once the word got out, everybody in the state of California, all the organic growers wanted to sell to us. And then once that happened, we started putting the names on the menu. And people would come in August and say, I want Masamoto's peaches. And I say, they're not ready for another month. You'll have to come again. But how about trying these plums? And it was that kind of feeling our way into it. And because it was almost like eating in somebody's house, it was in fact an old house, and we made it more like that, that people were a little bit more able to say yes. This, how great this was, how tasty. They didn't want to disappoint the host.
Well, that's always nice, right?
That was, but that is what encouraged us. And we put the names on the menu. And ultimately, when we opened the cafe upstairs 10 years later, we really...
Please stop. Paula, can you mute, please? Can you mute?
It's not me.
No, it's Paula. That's okay. They'll cut that out. They'll cut that out. That's okay. So go ahead. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You were saying.
So I was just saying that once we opened the cafe upstairs, we had so many more customers. We only could do that fixed price menu for about 100 people a night at the most. And so once we opened the cafe, we opened for 6 days a week, and we were able to really support the farmers. And that changed everything. That made us very present in the food world. And people came, and we had many, many interns, and it was a whole different situation in the kitchen. And I'd like to think it was almost a regenerative one, because we were all the time, listening to what other people had to say, and we're trying to make something that was better than the sum of the parts. So you needed that waiter who said they didn't like this in the dining room. Why not? Or you might have somebody who came up with a really good idea for the pastry. And oh yes, it would be better with pears than with apples. Or that kind of conversation is always present in the kitchen and in the dining room too.
But also, what I think is really interesting is the conversations you were having with the farmers, right? I mean, listen, a restaurant is a business. You were looking to serve the public, and you weren't trying to shove your message down their throats, so to speak. You were doing it in a very pleasant way. But as you were creating these relationships with the farmers and seeing the value of the food, I mean, I think of, 50 plus years later, how many restaurants I go into where we see the farms featured, on the menus, or the massive amounts of farmers markets that are now available nationally, not just for the chefs, but for, people who are interested in knowing where their food is from. In fact, I feel like that's been your drumbeat. Know where your food is from, know how it comes to fruition, know where, know your farmer, know all that. Now, like when you look back or if you look forward, do you see that what your work has accomplished and what you're looking for next?
Indeed, I do. Because I am not saying that our work is in any way, I mean, we could not do what we do without the farmers, the ranchers, and the fishermen. I put them first, really first. Their decisions about what they send to us is what makes the food what it is. And if they say, I've got a lot of nettles here, figure out a way to use them, like Bob would say to me. And I'd say, well, I didn't think you could cook them. He said, figure it out. So we made a little pizza. But it's a partnership that we have. And I can't stress that enough. We are here really to take care of the people that really make the restaurant what it's, to who take care of us. And so I think about an idea of schools being the economic stimulus for regenerative organic farming, not just in this country or this state, around the world. Everybody around the world farms and has schools. And it is a place where we can teach this to the next generation. I always say it's the only delicious solution to climate, because we know that regenerative agriculture can pull the carbon down from the atmosphere and put it in the ground where it belongs. And so if people are practicing, I use the two words organic and regenerative, because organic has had such an impact on my life, the organic movement in the state of California, and even across the country, that has a lot of meaning and values. But we're saying regenerative organic because we want to stress the aspect of it that is pulling down that carbon. And we don't have very long before it's going to be impossible to address climate. We have till 2030, the United Nations says. So I am really believing that we could make this dramatic change in procurement in the public school system. I met Janet Napolitano several years ago, right at the beginning of the pandemic, in my backyard. And I said, Janet, could organic food, or regenerative, be part of the carbon neutrality for you, for the University of California in 2025? And she said, organic, yes, but maybe we needed a few more years for regenerative. And I nearly fainted. I said, would you tell the Board of Regents? And she did. And that was great. But now we have President Drake. And he came over to my backyard. And he is somebody who is really understands health and regenerative ag. And he is very, very interested in making this change in procurement. I guess.
But is that sort of is that what the Edible Schoolyard project has become? Because in its infancy, wasn't it a little different?
Well, the Edible Schoolyard project really started 30 years ago, because the principal of Martin Luther King Middle School called me up and he said, hey, I hear you know something about gardening. Could you come and beautify the school? Because I had made a comment about how neglected our schools were in Berkeley and what had happened over the years. And he had a middle school with 1,000 teenagers, 6th, 7th, 8th graders. And I went there, and it had been built on 22 acres of land way back in 1921. So I just took a look and said, oh my God, Montessori teacher that I am. I said, oh, that vacant lot, a garden, and those portable buildings, a kitchen classroom. And oh, out on the blacktop, we'll build a cafeteria and feed all the students sitting down and eating organic rich. And I had this whole crazy vision. And he said, thanks, Alice. I'll get back to you. I was so relieved. But then he got back to me. And these kids spoke 22 different languages at home. So it was really an amazing test case. And I said, Neil, this is not about teaching gardening or cooking. This is about teaching all of the academic subjects in a garden classroom or a kitchen classroom. And I always use the kitchen classroom teaching geography as the great lesson, because who knew the kids would like pita bread, whole wheat pita bread, and greens and hummus? Who would know if you hadn't seen it? And these kids learned by doing. And that was Montessori's whole premise, was that our senses are our pathways into our minds. We need to be touching, smelling, tasting, listening. All of this I applied to Chez Panisse. I wanted the restaurant to be beautiful, the lighting to be bright. And as I've said over and over, I burned rosemary out front and let it come in the front door if things were not aromatic enough to give people the sense of the food. And we got a fireplace, and we cared about the lighting, and ultimately a kitchen that everybody could walk into. And all of these things were theoretically against health codes and all of the above. But in fact, when they saw how carefully we trained the kids at the school and how carefully we made everything at the restaurant, we labeled everything. Everybody knew about using the knives and all of the things that health departments worry about, and all the rules that had been set up, I think came from an industrial food system and from an industrial school system. So we are going back home in a way when we're talking about that. But I want to show you this map because in 30 years, with giving, classes every year for people around the world, we have 6,200 schools.
Oh my goodness.
Around the world.
That's amazing.
And this is from one school.
Isn't that incredible?
We did.
And it just seems like such a no-brainer to me that if you teach kids to not only know where their food comes from, but to respect food, to appreciate food, to understand food, to understand not just the nutritional value, but what it is, then this is something they take through them. I mean, in Europe, there's just a difference in Europe. In Europe, everybody respects the food. They respect the product. You're taught at a young age to love it. But
yes, the
correct me.
Imperial food system has gone around the world. I mean, there are McDonald's everywhere, and it's telling us the message: food needs to be fast, cheap, and easy, and it doesn't matter where it came from. You don't have to eat with your family anymore. You want it when you want it, and you want it 24/7. And so that's in the United States. That's what happened from the mid-50s on. Before that time in this country, at least we had land that wasn't polluted with pesticides and all of the above. But in Europe, this has, the French and the Italians, all big users of pesticides. And maybe they still eat with their family and care. But it's universal what's happened. It's a rare country like Japan, or because of the slow food movement in Italy, that there is an awareness. And I know that it's happening in France because the mayor of Paris decided all schools in Paris were going to have organic, regenerative food coming within 125 miles. And she's 2/3 of the way to doing it in 1 year. So,
well, hopefully we can get that here.
well, that's my plan. Is
Okay.
school
It's a
support
good one.
agriculture. So you use the buying power that exists already to support local, organic, regenerative food everywhere. And we know that there are people in Maine that are doing it, like Elliot Coleman. We know that we started edible schoolyards in different places around the country just to have proof of concept around different cultures and different weather. So we did one upstate New York, New Orleans, North Carolina, big cities like Brooklyn and in LA. And it didn't matter about climate or about culture. Every culture could embrace it. And I think that map is a testimonial, but I think also the values that we've reinforced at Chez Panisse, and so many people have worked there in these years and have their own ways of cooking and thinking about their farmers, but they all care about the values of stewardship and community and really purity of the land, a love of the land.
I would love to see a map, sort of 6 degrees of separation of Chez Panisse and Alice Waters, right? Like, I'm sure somebody's done one of like who worked for you and where they are now.
I was going to try and do that for the birthday this year. We were going to put out the word that we're looking for everybody in every country. Mm-hmm. But I know we have a lot of people in Japan because we're in proximity. And the Japanese, I went on book tour there. And we didn't just go to bookstores. We went to farms.
You better have, I bet.
Communities in the middle of nowhere. And I know this is our universal language. And if we want to bring people together, we want to talk about education and food and eating together that food in the schools. Because once you learn about the Middle East by eating your pita bread and hummus, you want to go there and eat there. You want to know who does this, who taught us how to do this. And you have a kind of respect that comes from travel. But lots of people can't travel, but they can travel when they eat and use those chopsticks. The kids all wanted to learn how to use chopsticks, things up in the school. And that is what connects you to different cultures. And it's such a beautiful sharing idea. And we're against so much that we need this way of loving the people who teach us a way of eating differently.
Agreed. I'm going to put a pin in you for just a second because Eric Spivey, who is with us, has a hard stop and I want to be able to give him time. So if you don't mind, Eric, I really would love to talk about just quickly. I mean, you've been on the show before, so a lot of people are very familiar with the Julia Child Foundation for Gastronomy and Culinary Arts, but just a quick catch up. Like, what are you guys up to these days? Let's talk about the mission a little bit and then what took so long for Alice to get the award? Because I think that's the question that inquiring minds really want to know.
That's right. Well, first of all, you can tell why she's the 10th recipient of the Julia Child Award, just the way Alice was speaking. And we're so blessed and honored that she is. Julia created her foundation in 1995, but didn't become operational until her death in 2004. And since that time, the trustees have really tried to make sure that people remember Julia, but also the mission is to really educate and encourage everyone to appreciate the joys of cooking and eating and understanding where their food comes from. So the alignment, the connective tissue between Julia and Alice is just so strong because the mission that we're sort of going after is something that she's been doing, since Chez Panisse, and even continues evolving her edible schoolyard project into bigger and more broad things that I won't spend time talking about, but I think we're just in awe. So the foundation's still out and about trying to support this. We're giving a $50,000 grant to Alice this year, which will go to edible schoolyard projects. But we're also this year doing something that is going to be really special on October 17th, which is we're going to be all together in Washington, D.C. at the museum with drinks near Julia's kitchen and then up to Flag Hall for a dinner where we will formally present the award to Alice, the 10th recipient of the Julia Child Award. But at the same time, we're going to have all the past recipients on stage at one moment that evening. So everyone's going to be there. So we've got, Jacques Pépin, Rick Bayless, Danny Meyer, Mary Sue Milligan, Susan Feniger, José Andrés, Danielle Nierenberg, Grace Young, Tony Tipton Martin, Sean Sherman, and, of course, Alice, where the focus will be on that evening. But at one moment, we're going to have all of them up on stage together, this mosaic of people. So when you ask why it takes so long to Alice, because we have a jury system. It's an independent jury that selects, but what we've done is we've really tried to make sure that we bring in different people from different sectors. It's not just a chef award. It's someone that's in the food or maybe potentially wine or other beverage part of the community. But we just sort of know and are so thrilled that the 10th year to have Alice as a centerpiece and really the core of this is going to be just a special evening, and we invite everybody to attend October 17th. They can get that information, and Paula Johnson can share that. But we've given out by the end of this year, about $3.5 million to nonprofits in the foods world. So we do a lot to try to support small organizations. We give little grants, typically. The only largest grants we give to is to the recipient of the Julia Child Award at $50,000. But we're out there just trying to make sure people remember Julia, but also remember what we're trying to accomplish with people remembering Julia, which is some of the same characteristics that Alice, has been doing day in and day out for so much time. And I think it's going to be just so fun, Alice, for us to be together on that stage and you receiving that award and sort of supporting the Food History Project at the museum, because one of the things that Julia did do is gift her entire kitchen from Cambridge, Mass. to the museum. And so you can go and visit that every year and see her entire kitchen, but also you can see her on screen next to it. So I'll let Paula give you more tasty morsels of that. But
okay, I know you have to leave. Before you leave, Eric, I know you have to go. I want to just take a quick picture of all of us on here because it's not every day we all get together like this. So I'm just going to take a quick picture. Everybody smile pretty. Okay, there we go. Great. Okay, so very quickly, Eric, I know you have to go, so I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for joining today.
Paula, yes. Nice to see you. Alice, love you, and can't wait to see you. We're going to be having a smaller dinner. We've been doing one last thing. We've been doing a dinner series across the United States, which is in the hometowns of the past recipients. So we've been everywhere from New York up to Connecticut with Jacques, and down to DC, Houston with Tony Tipton Martin, Rick Bayless in Chicago. But the last one we're doing is in Los Angeles on September 17th, just 1 month before. And I will see Alice there potentially. We'll see. That may or may not happen. We'll see. But it is going to be a wonderful dinner. But what it does do is sort of brought the museum out to the country. So we've really tried to, as a fundraising event, we're trying to raise monies for the Food History Project because Julia is the centerpiece, but what that museum does for educating people as it relates to everything that Alice is about is just amazing. So we really want to support and raise as much money as we can to keep that food history exhibit expanding and continuing to grow because it has such a great impact. I'll sign off on that. Thank you very much to you both. Nycci, thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course. Bye. We'll see you in October. Cannot wait.
Bye.
So very quickly, Paula. Are you here?
Yeah,
oh, yes, go ahead, Alice.
After Paula says about that, I'd love to say what we're going to do at the Smithsonian.
That's what I would like to ask. Okay, great. I'm so glad. Okay, Paula Johnson, I feel like we got you here. You here?
Yes, I am here, and I apologize. I don't know what is happening with my Wi-Fi, so I hope I remain in this wonderful conversation and don't drop out again.
We're going to make it work. We'll make it work. Okay. So Paula, listen, I've had a wonderful conversation with Miss Waters, and I'm so delighted that Eric was able to join us and give us sort of what's the whole run up of the event and everything that's happening in this celebration. But one of the things we didn't really get to talk about is how the partnership with the museum and the Julia Child Foundation sort of came to be and why you guys give this terrific award every year for 10 years now.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, the museum and the Julia Child Foundation has come together in a partnership for the last 10 years. And really, it started with the museum collecting Julia's home kitchen from Cambridge, Massachusetts in 2001, and bringing that kitchen to the museum, having it on display for so many years, now over 20. That is a really important part of the food history research, collecting, and public programming that we do. We do many, many topics and themes that are not directly related to the kitchen, but there are so many things about Julia's legacy that really intersect with the Julia Child Award and with some of the topics we've been able to explore over the years for Food History Weekend. So we have a formal partnership. The first year in 2015, the first awardee was Jacques Pépin. And of course, that made so much sense because, of course, he and Julia had this fabulous professional relationship, lots of cooking together in front of live audiences as well as on television. And so celebrating Jacques that first year really injected a lot of energy, but also brought a lot of people to the museum for a different kind of experience. And so for the last 10 years, we've been building on that every single year. And what I love, love, love about this is that each of the recipients brings a different perspective, different experiences, different knowledge, different enthusiasms to the program. And it just compounds every single year. So that, for example, this year with 10 years of recipients, we're really looking at Julia's legacy in terms of culinary education, advocacy, and community empowerment through food. And of course, there are these strands are found in Alice's work, but also many of the other recipients. So, after we have the gala on Thursday evening, October 17th. Yes, 17th, I got that
right. Yes.
Yeah, then we do our Food History Weekend programming. And, we're really so fortunate and so grateful to those recipients of the award who are staying around for an extra day to either do a cooking demonstration or to do a conversation around these themes and in their expressing, their own experiences and their own work. So that is October 18th and 19th. And I'm happy to say that Alice has agreed to be in one of the conversations with Sean Sherman.
Fantastic.
And then moderated by Danny Nierenberg. What's not to love about that? That'll be marvelous. Tony Tipton-Martin and Rick Bayless are doing cooking demonstrations that day. And then we also have a panel with Mary Sue Milliken and Susan Feniger, who will be talking about the future of women in food. So,
Well, they're both behind Regarding Her, and I do a lot of work with that organization. So I love them. I think what they do is great. Everybody is great. I mean, I love Tony too. I mean, all of them. They're so terrific. So everything obviously about the event is on the liststorywanted.com, and it'll all be in the show notes. But for like details and things like that, Paula, where can we send people?
AmericanHistory.si.edu. I'm looking.
Yes. Yes, you're looking. Okay, that's great. Well, listen, I'm glad we were able to get you on. I do want to go back to Alice. Alice, I really want to talk about, so you're getting this $50,000. I feel like you're going to Disney World. I mean, where are you going? What are you doing? How do you want to use these funds? Is my first question. But my follow-up question to that is, I love that there's so many of these programs, but I want more. I'm feeling very greedy, and I want to know what the general public can do to help advocate for these programs.
Well, the money for sure is going to the Edible Schoolyard Project. So, the one in Berkeley that I started 30 years ago, and that has been the model for people around the world, and we will continue to do that into the future. But on the 20th right after the 19th event, we are going to do an event at the Smithsonian that is going to feed 200 farmers and teachers. And we're going to serve them a school lunch that is organic, regenerative, and organic, locally produced. In fact, it's going to be the Three Sisters, corn, squash, and beans, all made into something tasty. And we're going to do it within the USDA reimbursement so that it can't be seen as something special that is happening just for that day, but it's something that we could serve students across the country and around the world. I mean, there are so many ingredients that are not only healthy, but delicious and loved by children that could be part of a school lunch. I could be the school lunch if we decided to do local food, no matter where we lived. And so I want, we invited people that could speak to this subject really well, whether it's a farmer like Elliot Coleman in Maine, or whether it's Michael Pollan or Eric Schlosser, who's been talking about it forever. Raj Patel will be there, but many, many other people. And we hope to be able to interview them and broadcast that at another point. But it's really critical that this message be loud and clear to the powers that be in Washington, that this is something that is not only vital for our health, but it's vital for our democracy. It is about the values of connecting at a table. Everybody has an opinion, to connect in that way, to eat food that comes from countries inspired around the world. So that is my goal for school-supported agriculture.
I just want one last question on that, because I feel the fight against that, I'm sure what you stand up against all the time, is the financials. People are like, we can't afford it, we can't afford it. And why is that? Why is good food, not good, nutritional, local, farm-raised food, why isn't it worth it? Do you understand what I mean? Like, why can't we change that narrative?
Because we've been indoctrinated. We're addicted to salt and sugar and cheap food. It's McDonald's plus everything. We want everything fast, cheap, and easy and available whenever we want it. And so it really, to think that you have to spend any money or time on food has to be introduced to children in school, that's something that's incredibly gratifying. And if I didn't see teenagers doing this in the edible schoolyard for 30 years, I wouldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe that they like to wash dishes, that they like to clean up, that they like to sit together, that they're having a conversation. This is so important, that we're not on a screen, that we're connected to each other. We're friends. And we've lost so much of that, and we can have it back again. But it really needs to be brought back when children are young. It's much harder when you're older to feel this. But the fact that we were dealing with teenagers at the edible schoolyard, 1,000 of them that spoke 22 different languages, I know for sure that food has the power to change the way you think about the world, to treasure the environment, to wake up your senses to the beauty of nature. And that's really how I fell in love. And I did it when I was much older because of France and that time of the world. But it is, in my mind, the only way that we will ever directly change the climate catastrophe that's happening. This is the only way. We have to love nature. We have to walk instead of driving. But if we only knew how pleasurable it is to walk in a park. I mean, it's not work. Exercise is not work. Exercise can the inspiration for your day, to feel the sun on your back, to feel the wind, to walk with friends and talk. We have so wanted to sell things to people, exercise machines, and you need this to lose that, and don't eat that, and eat this. We don't know what it feels like to lie under my redwood tree. I'm going to go out there and do that right now. But it's...
Yes, as well you should.
But it's that also in the restaurant business. And I have to say one word big about Julia because I met her in the first year of Chez Panisse because she was brought by Marion Cunningham to the restaurant. And she said, "That's not a restaurant. That's like eating in somebody's home."
Oh.
And we became friends then. And I've always loved all of her films to see how she sat down and ate at the end of every show. She ate with somebody or even by herself, just saying it's important, this part of it. It's about friendship and families, and it has another dimension. And your cooking is so worth it, especially when they like it.
Well, that's true. I am so grateful for the time with you today. Congratulations again on this incredible award. I cannot wait to be there on October 17th and to stand up and applaud, obviously, all the incredible good you have done for this industry and for how we live our lives. And to see all of you up on stage is just, I mean, it's just going to be so gobsmacking. I cannot wait.
I cannot wait either. And let it be said, it has never been work for me in that sense. Work. It's always been my love. And I think that's what Julia Child gave us as well. She loved all the little steps of the recipe. She made you connect in that way. You knew she loved it. So I'll see you there.
I'll see you there. Okay. Passion, profession, I always say should go hand in hand.
Exactly.
I want to thank, Alice Waters, Eric Spivey, Paula Johnson, all for joining me today. And thank you too for tuning in. This is Nycci Nellis on Industry Night. Don't forget to follow me at NYCCINELLIS on all the things because I'm having some fun. And please join me on October 17th because Alice Waters will be in the house. Thank you again. Be safe out there and have a delicious week.
Produced by Heartcast Media.